Today, some quick hit responses to your questions about Nikon Z cameras. I'm going to talk about the touch screen, some things to use with that, display switching between the EVF and the back display, and some playback view options that you should really consider when using these mirrorless cameras. All right, everybody. So this week's kind of a quick hit answer to a whole bunch of questions that I've been getting from Nikon Z users. I'm actually out in the Palouse with Rick LePage this week while this video drops, shooting some content both for my friends at ON1 as well as some of the stuff for the Milky Way and night photography course that I'm dialing in and about to release for all of you. But I've had a whole bunch of questions from people, in the wake of last week's video about Nikon Z camera autofocusing and just the Nikon Z camera content that I put out there about both, the back touch screen of these cameras and as well as switching between the EVF and the back display. I've had some people feel like they're having malfunctions when I think they just need to understand how the display switching works. I'm going to talk about some cool ways to use the touch screen. And I'm also going to talk about some playback options that you have that I think you should consider not activating and the ones that you should really consider using when you're previewing your images and looking and checking to make sure that you've got what you want when you're out in the field. Really quick, I want to thank everyone who's been supporting the channel, who's been using my links to buy photo gear and products at hudsonhenry.com/HES links. That really helps me out. I want to recommend that anybody who hasn't signed up for our office hours on night photography June 1st, that's Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific. It's a free collaboration of photographers. We'll take your questions, talk about shooting night photography and some of the things that are going into the course that I'm working on. Make sure you submit a question and sign up for either Zoom or YouTube Live. That office hours, if you can't make it, it'll be archived on YouTube. But I hope that you'll make it and check it out and join us for that. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to talk about some cool things, particularly I think for those of you moving from DSLRs into mirrorless or new Nikon Z users, just to consider. And the first couple things I just want to recommend people think about is, when you're using the viewfinder, you literally have the option of selecting the way that your focus points work with the touch screen. A lot of people have asked me, how do I make it stop shooting when I touch the touch screen? And that's this little box right here. You can touch that little box and it switches modes. Right now, if I touch, it's going to autofocus wherever I touch. If I hit that box again, it's going to autofocus and take a picture. I really hate that mode. I find it super annoying. Wherever you touch, it focuses and takes a picture. That's way too much automation for me. Now it's off. Nothing happens when I just touch out and about on the screen. The mode that I really like is position autofocus point. If I'm working in live view on the tripod, it's kind of the old DSLR way where I'd have my reading glasses on and I could say touch on my name there on the computer, hit the AF on button, boom, I get the green light. I know that I'm dead focused on the S in my logo on my laptop here. Another thing I really love to use on the touch screen is the I button. And that's the same as hitting the I button on the back, but now I can go into any of these modes. I can switch which autofocus mode I'm in. I can switch which autofocus area mode that I'm in. I can change the quality, and you can go in and custom set whatever you want in your iMenu. I have a list of suggestions in my Z6 II, Z7 II setup video that are kind of my latest thoughts. Those would be equally applicable to any of the Z cameras that you're using. But it's just a really nice way to move around and change settings in a flash. You can either hit this I button on the back, or you can, again, touch that touch button. So those are some fun ways to use the touch screen. Also, when you're going through images, here's some stuff from Mount St. Helens the other night when I was out doing some Milky Way photography. The ability to sort of jump in here, pinch and zoom, come back out, flip between images just by touching. It's nice. All right, let's talk about the different viewfinder and back display modes. I see a lot of people getting confused about this. There's a button right up here to the left of where the prism would be in your DSLR, and that activates different modes on the camera. So if I press it, right now I'm in viewfinder only mode. If I hit that button, if I hit it again, I'm in monitor only mode. You can see it kind of light up inside there. Now I'm in, I think I'm in, hold on, I have to actually watch the viewfinder sometime. Right now I'm in auto display switch. That's kind of the default. There's a little sensor right up here. And when you put your eye over the viewfinder, you can sort of see that this is lighting up right here. That's lighting up the viewfinder. Whenever my eye goes in there and covers that little sensor, boom, it lights up. Right, like that. That's auto display switch. If I touch this button, I'm in viewfinder only mode. If I put my eye up, the viewfinder comes on. Nothing else is going to happen. If I hit play, it's going to be in the viewfinder, not on the main screen. I have turned the main screen off right now. If I hit the button again, I'm in monitor only mode. Now that mode, nothing happens in the viewfinder. That's for working on the back of the camera. I haven't really found a reason for using monitor only mode. I like to put my eye up to the camera, use that beautiful, bright, big diopter adjusted viewfinder without my reading glasses and see everything razor sharp, move through the menus, preview my images, broad daylight, it works great. And then there's this mode that I don't think a lot of other brands have that confuses a lot of people. When you press it, it seems like everything goes dead. But if you put your eye up to the viewfinder lights up. It doesn't live view anything. If you're looking through the viewfinder, when you go into that mode, it says prioritize viewfinder. It's a badass mode, particularly for people doing time-lapse or night photography. What winds up happening is the only time that the viewfinder is activated is when you put your eye up to it, and the main screen live view is shut down except when you want to take a look at an image on the back of the camera. You hit play, or you want to hit the eye menu and change some of your menu settings, at which point you also get your exposure settings, which is really, really nice. You could also go into your menus and change your menus on the back of the camera. Say it's up above you on the tripod or whatever. The neat thing is that while you're shooting, it's not burning any battery on lighting up either the viewfinder or the display. So say you're doing long exposure night photography and you want to save your battery, the only time that it uses any energy for showing a screen either in the viewfinder or on the back of the camera is when you put your eye up to it. You put your eye up to it, it blocks that sensor, and all of a sudden it's showing you everything you want to know through the viewfinder. Again, if you want to preview images or change menu settings, you get it on the back screen, but it isn't just burning battery with that back screen active while it's doing a 4-minute Milky Way shot on your star tracker. A really, really cool feature. One thing that people have a lot of problems with the Z cameras, I think, is they have a dirty camera bag or they're working in mucky, grimy conditions and some gunk gets in this eye sensor and they feel like their back screen has stopped working. Nothing that they do will activate their back screen. Well, if they cycled through their options and went to monitor only, the monitor would probably start working right away. The thing to do is just slide your eye cup up. I love these custom eye cups. I'll have a link to that in the video's description, along with a chaptered out table of contents for you to run back through any section of this video that you're interested in watching. But the key is to just have a microfiber cloth and wipe off that little sensor right above the box so that it's clean. It doesn't have something obstructing it that makes you think your eye is there all the time. Just keeping that little bit clean is the key to not having that problem of it seeming as if the monitor doesn't come on. I think it's part of your cleaning process is making sure that that little eye sensor up there near the eye cup right inside there is clean all the time. All right, so I also said I would talk about some playback options. One other thing I want to talk about really briefly here, let's go into automatic display switch, are the different display modes. Before I wrap up with talking about playback view options, let's talk about some of the different display modes. This button up here that's inside the switch between still and video gives you different display options. So you can have all the exposure data and everything, or just the core exposure data along with the eye menu button and the focus choice button. your metering mode, and your battery level. That's kind of your minimal display option. Now, they offered a nothing on the screen display option by popular demand in the Z6 II and Z7 II. Unfortunately, they only made it accessible by programming one of your custom buttons to activate that. And for me, I use every single custom button for critical shooting modes. I wish they would just drop that into the display button mode. Nikon, if you hear me, please put the blank display mode here in the display options instead of making me burn one of my custom buttons for it. The next press of the button brings a live histogram onto the screen. That's a really handy thing that you get with mirrorless. There's also your leveling, so you can just dial in that perfect level that you're after until you get the green light. And then there's a view where you actually have, you can go into the eye menu if you want, but you get all your sort of exposure data like you might be able to get on the top panel or on an old school DSLR. One more press goes back to, it just cycles through. Those are your options. So then let's talk about playback and what I like to see for playback. Once again, I like a clean playback option. Nothing but the image. Image only is what they call that. Then I like exposure data. So I've got the file naming, date, time that it was taken, size of the file, exposure. Those are sort of two screens that go with exposure data. And then a red, green, and blue histogram. I live by my histogram. That's how I tell whether or not I got my exposure right. Those are the only playback options that I want activated on my camera. I don't have to cycle through very much. And what I'm always using is the full screen image only and the red, green, and blue histogram. I just know to hit up from the full screen vision, down from the red, green, and blue histogram. Those are the two options that I want all the time. And how I set those is up here. If you go all the way to the left in the Nikon menu structure, you go into the playback menu, and you've got up near the top playback display options, and you can just run through and check the ones that you want. I want exposure info, RGB histogram, none, image only. Go ahead and hit OK. Boom, that's locked in. That's how I have the playback options that I want on my camera, and nothing but the playback options that I want on my camera. All right, so hopefully that answers a lot of questions that those of you have been asking me about either playback or display switching between the EVF and the monitor and playback view options, plus the touchscreen, which I think is a really cool thing that you shouldn't forget that you have. It's a handy way to change settings really easily, particularly if you've got a touchscreen sensitive glove in dark conditions. It's just a really nice way to go in dark, cold conditions. I hope that those of you who are experimenting with these cameras for the first time are finding it just as fun as I do. I still hear from a few people who are just so used to their DSLRs, and I understand this, that it feels different and it feels awkward. And I think, that can be the case with any new piece of tech, even if it's better than the old piece of tech that you're so used to. One thing I will guarantee you is that this set of lenses, the S lenses that are made for these cameras, even the non-S lenses, are just mind-bendingly better than the F-mount lenses. There was a time when I bought these cameras thinking, well, this is really handy. I can use the FTZ adapter and keep shooting with my great F-glass. And then I tried some of the S-glass, and each of the primes that I've used has been light years better than the equivalent F-mount prime. Each of the zooms that I've used has been light years better than the F-mount zooms of the same aperture. They're just so good. So I'd urge you even to just try out one of these Z cameras, even with an f4 zoom, because I think you'll find it's better than your old f2.8 zoom of the same focal length. So they're just incredible. The lens renaissance that's going on amongst all the camera brands is amazing. So, my advice for new Z users is tuck the DSLR away, shoot for 3 weeks with nothing but the Z camera, then try to go back to the DSLR and see all the things that you miss. All right, that's my take. That's what happened to me, and my DSLR started collecting dust. So, all right, everyone, I'm in the Palouse right now, hopefully having some great weather and some fun shooting. There's a super moon that we're stalking that's having an eclipse as it sets at dawn, which could be really, really cool. So wish Rick and I luck on that. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Again, if you haven't signed up for my office hours on Tuesday, June 1st, make sure you sign up and drop a question. And there's links to the stuff I was talking about in the videos that I reference in this video's description. Just click on the title of the video or show more. I hope everyone's staying safe, staying creative. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.